I'm Kristof Van Tomme, and welcome to the API Resilience Podcast. If you've ever wondered what it really is we do when we do APIs, and if you've wondered how APIs change organizations, our communities, and our society, look no further. This is the podcast you've been searching for. Welcome to the API Resilience Podcast. Today we have Zdenek Nemec, also known as Z for people in the API community, who's one of the co-founders of Superface, which is a startup to watch. And we've had Z already on the podcast before, but last week you blew my mind yet again. With your presentation at the API at the Nordics APIs conference, and we got talking, and we got talking, and there were several things that were like, okay, we need to do another podcast because there's some really interesting things brewing, I think. So with that innuendo, welcome to the podcast, Z.
Kristof, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And yeah, it's a lot of interesting things happening in the API space and AI space and on the intersection of these two, because we are at the crossroads, and we'll talk about it, and maybe at a new way of how we do and interact with software. The talk was called "Should we or Have We Failed with APIs?" And basically, the second slide was we should stop building APIs unless we change how we go around it.
Yeah. So, and it was, you, for the record, you're still very much a proponent for APIs, obviously, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I think, the skipping all the slides in between, the last slide or one of the last slides were like, we need APIs more than ever.
Yes.
We just need to refocus or maybe rethink who are we building the APIs for.
The heart of your talk was about like a fundamental conflict of interest that you've identified between how most software companies operate today and the needs that we have as developers for software and as users of software. That is like bumping, and that you have realized while working with Superface and building for Superface. And can you tell a little bit more about that? What is actually the problem?
Yes, actually. So at Superface, we were building infrastructure for AI agents, these LLM-powered agents. So in API world, that means basically bringing tools for these agents to be able to do meaningful things. And then we are building a very interesting agent on top of this. Now, as we were doing this for the last 2 years, we realized we are actually blocked by the APIs and blocked by the fact that they are not existent, or they are there, but we cannot get the access. I was giving some examples like LinkedIn or Instagram APIs. They are notorious for, yes, being there. They have all the information that you might need. But as a small company or startup or medium business, you will probably not get the access, or it will take you weeks. Whereas if you would use some other solution, which is based on scraping, you would be able to access let's say the Instagram or LinkedIn information right away in like a minute, because these services have a very nicely designed API, nice API documentation. You can basically self-service, get your API key and get them connected. So that was one of the reasons. And then as we were working with other customers of ours, they wanted to maybe connect to a CRM. We did it, but then trying to get the access to their production version, it was not possible because of maybe security issues. So we were looking at the problem and say, hey, this company was not giving us access to their Salesforce instance because they had recently a security breach. So they ceased basically to give an API access, but possible basically a web actor, a screen scraper, that would go and click, the fill in basically the form in Salesforce, and so on and so on. With other CRM, we were able to do, let's say, 90% of the work, but some fields could be modified only through UI. So there's like this whole lot of problems with APIs, and we are not the only ones having these issues. We've seen other fellow agent builders basically struggling with getting APIs to do what they wanted to do. So they were looking for other ways how to achieve those tasks.
So it's basically because APIs, well, I think like let's first start with the LinkedIn ecosystem, because this is something that we've seen not only LinkedIn, but pretty much every major platform do in the last, 5 to 10 years, probably. Like they started with a big brouhaha. We're going to be doing this amazing developer relations program. We've got all these people going on the roads, getting people to build plugins for our stuff. And, quite a lot of investment, built really nice APIs. And then after a couple of years, they're like, actually, let's shut this thing down and just make it really expensive and paid. Or like in the case of LinkedIn, I think they have 2 CRM partners, or back in the days when they closed down, I remember that they had only 2 CRM partners, even though that there's lots and lots of CRM companies out there that were getting access to their APIs for like a LinkedIn CRM kind of capability. And that was, I remember the news from one company that had specialized in being like the LinkedIn CRM, and they basically got shut out of the LinkedIn API like from one day to the next. So that kind of stuff has happened in the past. And this was basically a backlash to opening up. So they opened up their ecosystem, and then they like, oh, actually, we're getting stuff happening that we don't want to happen. Like similar, I think Spotify was similar. They had a big DevRel program. I think it's still happening, but like also there's less DevRel investment happening there. So there's been this swing back from openness.
Yeah, and one of the most notorious here was Twitter, even before.
Of course.
Position, Twitter was notorious for, even before Elon took over, they were notorious for having the API program and then cutting everybody out and whatnot, right? So these are social networks. Of course, there are values in the content that the people are contributing, and basically they want to safeguard it. And I believe their thinking was, oh, well, we open the API or API access to our platform, so people can build other applications and everybody will be using our platform, right? So it will be spreading. And I think it worked back in the days for Twitter, because there were many Twitter clients and basically these people were using these clients and they were loving Twitter and, adding, posting on Twitter and whatnot. And then later on they realized, okay, well, that's cool, but we don't really control the distribution of the content or basically advertising. So these third-party clients can remove the ads or whatever they want to be doing, right? Whereas we are living from the advertisement. So they started to cutting this down. And similar thing actually is also Spotify, because obviously that's about music and the rights with the with the musical content, and so they don't want to be, I believe, giving somebody the possibility to distribute or use the music, the content. And it's not the Spotify, it's actually the record labels behind it. But same point, they want to be controlling who can access the content and how they are presenting the content, meaning adding the ads or whatever they are doing with it.
Yeah. So it's there's limitations in their business model that are making it it's like there's negative value in opening up for them, and or their business model doesn't allow for it to.
Yeah, but at the start it was positive value because they were not so widespread. So people building their apps and building stuff with Spotify or Twitter or LinkedIn, they helped the spread the word, right? Yeah. But once they had everybody or almost everybody, they started like shutting this door down so they can have a control. They acquired basically with the help of these companies. So in a way, it's very actually not nice, I would say, that they basically abused or used these third-party software vendors spreading their platform, and then they shut them down.
It's like this. Something very similar is happening in open source, by the way. I don't know if you followed the whole brouhaha around WordPress. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole big story there. because there's this tension between the makers and the takers. Although I prefer to think about givers, matchers, and takers, because I think that's a better model. Because then I think that aligns better to how open source works. But in the WordPress community, the founder got into a beef with one of the largest other WordPress companies because they were not contributing as much as his own company was contributing to the project. And then he basically like shut off access to the platform. There's a whole bunch of governance issues and so on. But the central question is this, in the beginning, it pays to be open. And you build an ecosystem and a community that's built on top of what you do. And then as you grow and you become the dominant player, it pays off to close down and to like start, becoming a taxation troll. You have to pay to pass the bridge kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly that. And hello, OpenAI, right? That's how the name of the game, I would say. Yeah.
So this is a trend that we've seen with interfaces. So where we start with very open interfaces, and then organizations start closing them down as their strategy changes. And this feels like probably it's changing the expectations, and it might actually be a regulation question, probably.
Hey, this is only one of the problems, right? And these are the social media or the content platforms, if you will. And yes, this would be a very interesting thinking for regulations. And I'm not too big of a fan of the regulations that we have here in Europe, but it got me thinking or wondering whether if you can access some data through a website or user interface, I think you should be actually allowed to be able to access them by other digital means, not just through UI. And I'm obviously going to the agents and to the bots that will be acting on our behalf, right? Like if you can do it as a human with a hand and eyes and click on things, then you should be also entitled to do the very same thing through your agent, which acts on your behalf in the digital world.
And this is, I think that's a really interesting proposition. And I think there will definitely be commercial implications of this, because right now with the SaaS world, there's basically a battle for attention. And like the whole product-led growth model, you said this, right? That because I was poking you and asking like, so, is this the end of SaaS? Because this is like, and then you said, well, actually, SaaS is dependent on attention. It's part of the attention economy, and because of that, this is going counter to that, because your attention economy requires control over graphical user interfaces, because that's where people are paying attention to you.
The presence, in the UI. But I think we should explain this maybe a little bit, going back in the history. So some 25 years ago, Mark Bienhoff of Salesforce came with this wonderful campaign called End of the Software. And basically they were claiming, I think back then they were against Siebel Altron was the software distributed on the CD-ROMs or whatever, floppy disks. And it was on everybody's computer, and nobody cared about the daily active users back in those days, right? You bought a medium, whatever, floppy disk, you installed the software and you were using the software. And these guys Salesforce came with this wonderful campaign called End of the Software. And they were like, forget the struggles. We have the solution. Here is a cloud software with it. Everybody can go to. You don't have to distribute these mediums. So you will always have the latest version. It will be much easier for everybody, for us to maintain, update and whatever, and for you to consume and install and to use. And this is how our SaaS, our cloud applications were born 25 years ago, right? And now we are seeing or listening to people, including our customers, that they are saying, "Hey, our salespeople don't like to work with a Salesforce or with a CRM in general. Our salespersons don't like to be, filling the CRM. They don't like to be spending time in those UIs things. They don't want to be there, right? So." Yet these companies are now measuring their success with the activity, with our attention, and with the time basically we spend in their software.
So it's this because the way that their business model works, like they're successful if they can capture the attention of more people, so that then they can explain to their bosses that more people are using our software, so you should pay us more per seat licenses, and so on and so on. And it's the attention that is like a crucial element in not only measuring but also in explaining what is the value of the software, and that has led to a lot of good things, like this product ownership and so on. Product thinking is very, very good stuff. Also, that also got carried over into the API community, but now maybe it's gotten a little bit too far, or what? Yeah, that this is the feeling that we have, right?
Yeah, but again, this was not the case 25 years ago. That was not the metrics. The metrics of a successful software was something different, right? Not how much time you spent in front of the screen. Yeah. Basically, you distributed the software, and those were your KPIs. And albeit you were not able to measure what people are doing in your software. I mean, as we are progressing with the technology and with the cloud and with the SaaS, we are obviously also progressing with being able to monitor the users and whatever they are doing, right? But maybe now it's the time to look at this critically and say, hey, that's not really the metrics that we should be looking at anymore. And I'm saying this not that it's bad or anything, but now is a new technology emerging, a new way to interact with the software is emerging, agents, and that's actually going to challenge these things. So yes, you might have a monthly active agent or something like that. That would be basically like a usage thing. They won't care about your UI and the commercials that you might be showing in the UI or the upsells that you are trying to do, or also if you want this feature you need to pay or whatever. They will just go to that interface, whether that will be API or UI actually doesn't matter. They will fulfill the job that you task the agent with, like do this, do that, right? Agent will go there, use the API or use the UI, get the job done, and basically hand the work back to you.
Well, there's a strategic tension field here, because that probably means this super fragmented landscape of SaaS software that we currently live in, that is currently being measured by attention, comes under tension there. That either we'll have to have a massive consolidation where we have a few large players that's cut across a bunch of experiences, and that's like the single platform for everything. Okay. Or we have to have like components that you can compose and that have a different model of measuring their success.
I think what will have to change is like the differentiators for the company. So what they are competing on, what's their benefit? Because now I think many companies, for example, in the CRM space, they are competing on the UI, and they are like, oh, this is way better UI than the other thing, so we'd rather use this one, right? And also the messaging platforms, that will be the same. Slack, Teams, if you remember HipChat before, or whatever we had in the past, right? Like they were, oh, this is much more user-friendly. This is much more, better to control, easier to control, whatever that was. It's like this fundamental functionality was there anyways. Like that was sending the text, maybe a picture or whatever, that essentially didn't change. But what were their advantages were really in the UI or in the flow or whatever in the user experience. And now if this is going to be taken over by the agents and you'll be controlling it through the agents, then this won't be a differentiator anymore, right? So this company would need to rethink, okay, what's our value? So if there is an agent in front of our CRM, what's the differentiator of our CRM compared to other CRMs, right? Like give me the real benefits, not and I don't want to downplay it. Like better use important. Now, if you look at Salesforce compared to some other CRM, then that's like really day and night difference in the complexity. But these agents are actually going to commoditize these SaaS applications.
Yeah,
they will not like it, and that's not only social networks, obviously, but any kind of SaaS with a SaaS UI.
So it's the capabilities. So there's a shift from UIs as the core function of differentiation to capabilities as a differentiating factor, or like there was Ezra Kutsuk-Tivtsi from Pricing Innovations, who did a presentation at Nordic APIs. She was talking about components. I think like service components, where you look at your company and you try to identify what are capabilities, but it's not only for the outside but also on the inside. Or how do you see that?
It's the differentiators, right? It could be capability, so I can do something that you cannot. It can be the way you execute the capability. It can be faster or more reliable. It could be obviously price, or the fact that you have that capability or data or that information, right? So there's like many of these differentiators, but maybe it won't be anymore. Hey, my user experience is better than yours.
Yeah,
there might be agent experience of some, or AI experience or whatever. So agents are more likely able to work with our software. And again, these companies might, or some of them will be embracing this new world, new interface, and some others they'll be trying to make it actually difficult for AI to be able to control their software.
Like we've had one big market, one of the pivotal markets for the API space that had this the scraping problem where it was actually really problematic and dangerous actually, which was the banking sector before PSD2, where companies started popping up that got consumers to log in with their personal credentials into their banking software online, and then this third-party application would just have the same rights as the consumer in their own banking software, which basically meant that you had to trust that this piece of software was really not going to do anything malicious, because they could just basically rob you blind and take all your money. It feels that this is that same problem, but much, much, much larger now. Yeah.
And we are not ready for that.
Yeah.
In a way, this came unexpected because obviously we were historically trying to have some anti-scraping and whatever. So I'm not a scraping or web actors or whatever access expert, but there was always this mouse and cat race or game with these, like as scraping got better, then the anti-scraping got better, and so the are trying to protect themselves. And there's like, I would say, two types of scraping. I would say one personal, where this agent is acting on your behalf. So it really goes, let's say, to a link. It gives you, for your use, the information about what posts are on your timeline or whatever, and posts on your behalf. And then there is this other, I would say, way more aggressive scraping, where that goes to the LinkedIn, get to all the users in the area that have some, basically for lead prospecting or whatever, and like massively pulling the data about everything and everybody, and basically trying to get all the data from LinkedIn as much as possible. So that one, this is just for the clarity, I'm not talking about that. I don't want that to be happening. I want LinkedIn to have a control over this mass scraping or mass and I eat your data. But when the thing is acting on my behalf with your software, that's definitely the access that I'm looking at.
And this is an issue of access contexts, like the boundaries between different contexts.
Yeah.
Because you as an individual, you have access to your own LinkedIn, and you might use that to gain information about a company that you're using for your company.
But it's because of the web and the interface they present in their SaaS application. It's making it for you as a human person difficult to get loads of the content, right? they somehow control what they present to you, how they present it to you. Now, if your agent can do this really fast, which is the point, then obviously that agent can get a lot of data. So that's where the challenge is, and this will be also a little bit different topic, but very similar to this is basically agents being able to do B2B deals. Right now, if you want to, let's say, get price offers on something, let's say you are asking for some goods, you need to basically reach out to those companies, tell them what you want. They might be, working on the offer, and they will get offered to you in whatever, a week time or whatever, something, right? Now, if you have these agents that can, visit many systems and get like evaluate what are the prices of these things on the market and what they were sold, and they can do it in a split of a second. That will radically change the business. Right now, it's not only attention economy, but also there's some money that are made by the obscurity, that you are able to access the information really quick and get a lot of pricing offers or whatever that is, right? That's creating the scarcity that's allowing companies to have a higher margin.
It's like attention or presence arbitrage, where you're able to get a premium because there's an incomplete information context that people are acting in.
This is about to shake everything. If this change, the traditional way of doing the business, not about changing the way how we interact with the software, but also the way how we do business digitally.
So this is basically e-commerce to an exponent, because this is similar what e-commerce did. You could, instead of like buying in a local shop where you had no information about prices, now you can go and search and
how much
you can compare.
Wait, I'm not buying. I was just doing it actually last week when I was flying from Stockholm. Like, hey, is it better to buy it here? Well, it was not, because I used my Google or whatever search and get those prices. So but this will be taking, that we will be just thinking about it. Basically, this will be happening. Yeah. So actually, very good analogy.
Yeah. So talking about agents, because there's you were talking about this agent on your behalf versus agent as a virtual coworker. That's working in an organization doing a certain job without necessarily, is that without supervision or potentially or less supervision?
Well, we will be getting there, right? Over the time, as we will start trusting them, we'll have more and more agents working with less and less supervision. So to the point where we'll have a full autonomous ones.
So this is a little bit like, I made this comparison. I think I talked to you about it, with self-driving cars versus GPSs. So I think we're currently at the place where agents act, or where an LLM will act as a GPS, will give you advice on what you might want to do. And you could follow it potentially. Agents that act on your behalf, that's like a self-driving car that you're still have some control over.
Yeah, but again, depends on the task, right? Some of the tasks you can let those agents to do, and maybe you won't be even reviewing their work, and some of them you really definitely want to ensure that whatever they did is the right thing.
But still, it still has that problem of how do you communicate the user or the access context. Am I accessing as an individual, as a person? Am I accessing as an employee? Am I accessing as a company? Or is that a partner? Is it a competitor?
I think there will be some sort of like user identity for agents. Well, then they'll be probably using, in the scenarios where it matters, the identity of their human patrons, if you will. So I think we would love to change that. So you will be signing up as a bot, or bot is not the right word, as an agent. So you will have a sign up for agent, and that goes back to basically delegating access to our APIs, right? Like you want to be able as an agent to sign up for an API on behalf of a user. I mean, these are still things to be solved, but definitely this is coming. So basically what we were doing historically, we were like having this concept with APIs of a user identity, so users using OAuths of some sort, and having the machine access to the API, so you had some sort of bearer tokens or whatever that were used in a way, we call it machine to machine or backend to backend or whatever, as you want, sort of API communication, right? So I think those will be less prevalent over the time, this backend to backend, because you will need some sort of OAuth dance for agents, so for AI. I mean, it might be OAuth, there is nothing wrong with that, actually, but the identity, the token that is being exchanged will be identifying an AI agent and not a real person.
So it's, well, at the same time, it might be an agent that works on your behalf. Like, is there already technical infrastructure for this?
I would say it's not dedicated to this, at least not too much. But again, you can use the OAuth 2 flow. There is nothing with it. But the type of the grant might be signifying, hey, this is not a human. This is an agent user.
Yeah. Like what you give a
link to a human that has an account with us, or here's the funny part: it might not be linked to a human but an organization, right? So it might be an agent and not a personal agent. So this probably will need its framework. Not necessarily. I mean, I would not say it's a technical problem. It's more like how we agree on doing this kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of room for abuse, for misunderstanding.
Yes, there is, but closing eyes and saying, "Hey, I'm not going to allow this," it's not going to help you, right?
Of course. So I think that the companies that are, or people and organizations that are able to navigate this careful balance act, they will be the winners. I don't think that you can opt out from an agent world where people have agents that act on their behalf, because the benefit is so huge that I don't think that's possible to opt out from that. There are still questions around certain capabilities, about certain reasoning and so on, but the ability to, I think probably this is the big killer feature of AI, or is that it enables us to combine these disparate workflows that we currently have in different systems, and to in the moment recombine them in ways that are personalized, which is something that, and this is the problem where the attention economy comes in and the graphical user interface problem comes in, because we're not built for that. We're not built for this recombination of services that are meshed together. Right now, if you want to do that, you have to pay a lot of money to a developer that's going to build you something specifically for that job, that is going to and that will do that in a well-constructed, deterministic way, which is probably preferable. But it's just too expensive to do it for everything that we're doing. And for lightweight things, or for things that are really well known, it would be much easier if you could just make a quick mashup together.
Yeah. So first thing you mentioned, you can opt out. I mean, as some companies were opting out from e-commerce. They're a brick and mortar store, and they never went to have a website or whatever. So they did opt out, right?
Yeah.
I'll ask what happened to them 20 years later. I mean, historically, some of the high luxury brands or whatever, they were basically opting out from e-commerce. Now all of them, I believe, have some sort of e-commerce presence. We're like, oh, this needs. They have some reasons, probably good reasons, like an in-person touch in the store or whatever. So they were opting out from the e-commerce movement, if you will. And as always, as with everything, there are money to be made and there are money to be lost. But for the time being, you can stay on the sideline. So you don't have to jump on all this agent bandwagon just yet. You can be standing on the sidelines and waiting basically how it will play out. But I would say, over 10 years, there will be no opt-out.
And there's a strategic advantage to be made if you do this right early. There will be new winners that will grow out of this. The same way that there were new winners growing out of the API wave, SaaS wave, etc.
My point was, like in the talk, if you will decide to stay on the sidelines. It might also happen that you will lose the business, or people won't be using your offering, or they will simply walk away, or they will use some sort of web actors, and they will be whatever, scraping your site or trying to control your site from their computers, even if you won't be giving nice API access to their agents, right? Yeah. So some risk that you are running into if you decide to stay on the sidelines, obviously, and that you will be commoditized even more. Now, back to these companies and CRMs in particular, they are starting to understand that there are these agents coming. People don't like to work with their software. They should know it in the first place, and they do know it in the first place. HubSpot CEO, he's very, very big and fond of AI, and he's pushing it in HubSpot. Salesforce is now also trying to catch up, and frankly, that's the only way that they can actually do in this attention economy game, trying to stay relevant, bringing their own AI solutions and their own agents. So you might have a Salesforce agent in the hope that people will be using that and not other agent using Salesforce, right? So what I'm pretty sure we'll see over the time is some of the companies will be embracing this. Some of the companies will try to provide their own agents, so you don't use your own agent. And some of them will be trying to shut down their API access, similar to what we discussed at the start, like the Twitter did, or LinkedIn, or Instagram. So once they realize, this is happening, we need to close our APIs because these agents are coming and they are using our software, and people are not going to our UI anymore. It's more and more agent.
It's always hard to look ahead to predict what's going to, well, it's impossible to predict what's going to happen. But yeah, it's definitely a tumultuous edge of what's happening. And this was the question I wanted to ask. What is going to be the mix between agents visiting stuff and doing stuff, and people still using graphical user interfaces, do you think? How do you feel? Like, you've actually been using some of your own software in your own company. Do you think, I'll start with what I think, and then I'm curious what you think, but I still feel that there's a bigger emotional context that you can get, and it's easier to get a trust feeling, or like, can I actually trust something? If you look at the production quality of a website and like what is in there and how is that built up. Now, of course, if AI makes it really, really easy to make a really high quality website, maybe then that becomes less relevant. What has the company chosen to highlight? What are they paying attention to? What are the stresses that they're putting? That gives you an idea of the coherence of their strategy.
Will you need a website?
That's the question. So,
what happened to the e-commerce? Mm-hmm. Like UI websites of the e-commerce are designed for certain flows, and that if you buy this, you might also buy that, and whatever, right? But if that's not there, if your agent is doing purchase and you send it to purchase this and that, what will happen with that? With all that e-commerce website?
So with the e-commerce website, yes. So like that, the optimization of flows. I think my question is about the future of the open web. Like, because we've had several big pushes against the open web. We had, the Web 2.0 with the platforms that, like, we had elections this weekend, and I was looking up some of the candidates, and the only content I could find was a Facebook page because it's local elections. And currently, I don't use Facebook anymore, so I couldn't see that content anymore.
Yeah, I don't like that as well. Yeah. I actually hate it. Like when there is some event or whatever, a local restaurant menu only on the Facebook, and I cannot sign up for Facebook. But that's their decision. They decided to put the menu on that page that is after a login. And your decision is, do I go there, or do I sign up if I'm going to that restaurant? Do I buy their platform that they are using to consume their menu? Or not. If you do, you probably want to go to the restaurant and say, hey, put it somewhere else because I cannot access it there. And don't do it. I won't be coming to your restaurant because I don't have time for this.
But there is that question of what will be the source of content? Will it be distributed the way that it currently works, where companies have a myriad of platforms to choose from to host their content in the web format? Or how do you see that?
Well, I mean, what API podcast this would be if we would not mention REST. uh, this is one of the original theses, right? Like or even behind the web, the idea was there are these documents on the different computers, and they are interlinked. And so if I go, I don't have to go physically to visit those computers, and I can, follow links between the documents. Now, the rest came to this and look at that, and Roy Fielding was like, okay, this is pretty neat concept. Let's expand it to any sort of data, right? So it's not just the HTML hypertext, but any sort of data. And maybe now we are finally getting to when this might be applicable, because, okay, so predominantly we have now all the data and all the information in some sort of HTML on the web, right? And now we have these engines, these agents that are able to consume it for the first time ever. But they are also, good at consuming it in a digital way, and in a way they might render the HTML obsolete, as in a form of for consumption. But the resources, the fundamental data and actions that you can be doing with those websites, or the data that you can be reading or accessing through those websites, are still there. It's just the representation might be changing from HTML to something more suitable for agent use. And this goes actually very interesting thing, since you mentioned open web. Tim Berners-Lee recent push was for a semantical web, whatever label it. And the idea was like, engines or software is not able to understand HTML or whatever is written in the HTML. It can understand the HTML, but it doesn't understand what is said there. Well, that years ago.
Yeah.
So since OpenAI and large language models, our software can understand what is actually written on that website. This wasn't possible before, so we had this open link data, and we have basically this push for adding the semantics into websites and into APIs. Well, I'm not saying it's no longer needed, but now we have machines that can infer the semantics, that can understand what is actually happening there.
Yeah, and machines can do semantic embedding now, and actually go and create those, like a projection of that meaning that those individual words have. It still is the question. So do you imagine then the whole internet's, all the visual stuff goes away and it becomes a bunch of APIs that's you build your own UI in front, or how do you imagine it?
There is this article, you can then link it in the show notes, that came almost a year ago, that's reading basically agents are coming, and they are the biggest revolution since we brought Microsoft Windows, and we brought and since the internet, and that's actually the truth. So that's Bill Gates' very nice article. He's tackling all those with the privacy and security and all that in that article a little bit. So they are coming. They are actually here, and they are going to challenge how we do software. Right now, we are really just realizing that this is happening. Some of us are realizing it. Most of us are not realizing this. But obviously, over the years, this will be changing. So we have more and more usage of the web or digital information through agents and not through our websites. That will change. 10, 20 years from now, those websites might not be relevant anymore. I don't know, but I'm surprised if that would happen. I would actually be more surprised if 15 years from now, we'll be still using web browsers to consume data. That would be surprising to me.
Yeah.
But I might be wrong.
There is an emotional bandwidth that you can have in a website. Like where, like the design you choose, the content that you prioritize. Now, of course, if you start personalizing websites, some of that goes out of the window. Like if you have this personalization agent, personalization engines that are being used today.
So don't you hate it? Because most of the time I jump between different websites and I'm trying to read blogs or whatever articles. And I'm using whatever Safari has this reader's mode or whatever, but which basically hides all the UI elements and renders the actual content, the text in a similar way on very different websites, kind of harmonizing how the websites are looking, because these different blogs and news sites and whatever, they came with advertisement here, advertisement there. And over the time, as I'm basically going to these websites that I'm reading it mostly through the reader's mode. I mean, there are some very pretty websites, don't get me wrong, that are artistic, or they are like, oh, I'm like, oh, this is a very nice website, but I'm no longer impressed by flashy. Oh, by the way, do you remember Adobe Flash?
Yeah.
Right. Of the scrolling, and Apple is notorious for those informations where 5 years ago it was very cool. Maybe it's 10 years ago when you were scrolling through the Apple websites and whatever the images were moving and things were happening. Now I just want to go there and give, what's the price, what's the technical, give me the data, give me the information, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to page in a different way. So I hear what you are saying, and there might be websites, but that's the content, that's the movie, that's the music, that's the artistic website or gallery or photos or whatever, right? That should still be there. That won't change, albeit AI, of course, can attack that as well. But that still will be there. But getting the textual data, getting the information, how things, like how much does this T-shirt cost or the shoes?
Yeah, you don't want all that distraction stuff.
.com or Zara.com is looking better or not, right? Will I find what I want there? But that's not necessarily related to visual, pleasantries. Let me put it this way.
That's it's a really interesting question, because we've seen this in the Dev Portal Awards.
Yeah.
One of the things that people talk about, is like this delightfulness. Like, does this experience, like, what is making a great experience is sometimes it's about delighting your customers.
Yeah, agree. And that's why you had these luxury brands ignoring e-commerce. I can give our lucrative customers a way better experience than if they go in their clunky browser and try to look at those luxury goods, right? You have somebody who's taking care of them in the store, in the boutique, and they were serving them coffee and drinks and discussing all the possibilities. And they, given like their high margin, they could afford it, right? Whereas if you are kind of building something cheap with a low margin, you need the volume. So the e-commerce and with a website, because you still want to provide a delightful experience. Okay, developer portal. So if your API would be integrated by one developer over a year, you probably might want to have somebody, dedicated customer developer success person, who would walk them through, have a nice coffee with them, explain them how the API works, right? Like, why would you not have it if that's one integration over a year and it's like a very important business partner, whatever, right? But if you want to self-service hundreds and thousands of developers, then yes, you need to go self-service developer portal. You need to make it very pretty for them. Twilio or Stripey API documentation. Oh, this is the experience that we like, and it's pleasant for developers. It makes sense, easier for finding information. So, but that was built for this not a high fashion, but really fast moving goods, and then just basically get the Stripe API integrated. We were always measuring like time to first API call. Okay, yes, if you need that, you have a self-service, you need a streamlined experience, and you just make it really quick. And if it's delightful in the process, even better, right?
It's the whatever, like, non-contextual maximization of things for developer experience, for like operational. We have this maturity model for dev portals. There's developer experience, which is for people that consume APIs, operational excellence, or operational maturity, which is about how easy is it for people to publish onto the portal. And then the third one is business alignment. It's like, are you actually, have you actually figured out how this is going to make you money? And is this portal helping you with that part? So not everybody needs to have a Dev Portal award in developer experience. If you're selling to developers and developers are the decision makers, then it could be valuable. If you are selling to an enterprise company, then just having just enough developer experience is going to be okay. Similarly with operational like the operational maturity, how far does an investment pay off? And how do you balance investments in different areas so that you get to an end result that that makes sense from a business perspective? Yeah, and I think that's the key. Yeah,
we wanted to move very efficiently with API integration or API consumption. We wanted to make it as efficient as possible, but fundamentally we were making more efficient horses, because it's still, to me, APIs are fundamentally wrong in a way that it is software talking to software.
Yeah.
Yet we have humans publishing software interface and other humans trying to understand that software interface and programming that software. And we wanted, and we historically tried to streamline this and make it as more efficient and easy for developers and on both sides for one, but we were doing an API to publish and design their APIs and from the other side, like to consume SDKs and developer experience, whatever. But it is people connecting software. Whereas now we are at the verge of software talking to software without the need for people to hooking them up.
It'll be interesting to see what is the future of APIs. Do they become the electricity of the information space? Like, do they become a true utility?
We talked about it, and it's not the electricity. It is the electricity is the capabilities or the value that's going through the APIs. APIs are the infrastructure, so API are the power lines. We had this nice discussion about it. That APIs are the plumbing, are the power lines. They are the infrastructure. They are not the goods on the stuff that is moving to that infrastructure. They are the roads, right? They are dead. They are not. And as such, like, how do you monetize road? How do you monetize infrastructure? It's really mostly the goods and the stuff that's moving through that, and not the infrastructure itself.
But it's like, well, what kind of network is it? Is it something like electricity that is ubiquitous and that everybody's using that one thing? Or is it more like railways, where you have some super high value like railway roads between certain really dense areas or certain industrial areas and other industrial areas and harbors and stuff like that, where there's sufficient value to create this super constrained interfaces? Because this was the presentation I did in London. So there was the AI as self-driving car, but there was also roads as digital interfaces and APIs as railroads potentially, which is where, roads, like in the US, there's roads everywhere where there's very, very little railroads, and the investment in railroads in US, it basically has been at a standstill, for the most part. Like, there's been some small exceptions, but in China, there's been huge investments in railroads. Japan, huge investments in railroads. Europe, somewhat. Like we already were, we had quite some railroads already, so it was more an upgrades than new build. Now, it's unquestionable that if you put railroads into a country, it changes a whole bunch of stuff. You get 300 kilometers an hour movements. You don't have to fly.
Yeah. So essentially, it's still a way how do you move cargo and people around, right? How do you access the capabilities? With APIs, you have the same. You have whatever REST APIs or GraphQL APIs. You have fuzzing APIs. You have whatever web scraping, web actors. You have all these different means to access the data or do things, right? And we are laying down the foundation. We as API experts are laying down in these different roads and railroads and air paths or flight paths or whatever. But they are all here to basically access the data or do some actions, right?
Yeah, but it's the will it be more like railroads that are like high cost investment that is like more bespoke? Or will they be more like just regular roads that is like they're everywhere?
I would even go more crazy, and I would say these are like flight paths, like or even a helicopter can basically fly everywhere, right? If you have a software that is able to figure out where the other software is and how to talk to it, then that's almost peer-to-peer. You don't need this main road and this corridor for railroads or whatever these are called. You don't need those, because these things can figure out where they are and how to get from A to the B directly. So it's like taking a helicopter and flying. I mean, I'm obviously simplifying this, but flying from one server to another server or computer to computer, you don't need a main road to have that or having these interconnected already, right? So this will be more, I would say, this will be more like a mesh than some structure with the main kind of APIs. We'll see about that. Well, obviously, now on the web, it's not the case, because yes, you can have these documents and web pages interlinked, but there are some nodes in the internet, being Google, obviously, that is kind of the main junction or traffic. This is actually changing. This is. I think Google is very threatened by what is actually happening with AI, because now, I don't know how about yourself, but I'm basically searching for things using Perplexity or U.com or whatever, ChatGPT directly, and no longer going to go to do a Google search. So this is actually a threat in there, that this major junction of the internet is seeing less traffic. And I think, but with APIs, we don't have that main junction just yet. Maybe, and this is maybe what we want to achieve with Superface, is we want to become that junction, that place where these agents go to look up the capabilities of other software and connect to.
Yeah.
But right now with APIs, I would not say we have that. Like one that, and historically, there were these attempts to have this API portals, like public API portals, right? Where people would list their APIs and it would go there.
I think the other part of the analogy is that like railroads, you have no freedom. Your wheels have to be on the iron. That's the only place that you can go. With the regular roads, you have a lot of freedom. And I think that as humans, we can deal with that freedom. Also, agents are a little bit better at dealing with that freedom. I think deterministic software is not good at dealing with freedom.
No, but it's because it's made manually. I mean, it's not good with that freedom, but it's also built manually. So you can have this proud of it, unless you have millions and millions of developers doing it, right? Developers doing it. So you cannot have that freedom with a deterministic, hand-built, handcrafted software, right?
But it's because of that the high-speed rails can go 300 or even more kilometers an hour, is that they're so hyper-constrained that they can go much, much faster. And also, they're linking up super dense networks with each other that then again are linked through another rail network where lots and lots of people are going every day.
Yeah, but you need to put that manual effort, that labor into link these, right? And that's what we were looking at right now. I mean, but this is like everybody's having these flying cars or whatever, helicopters, right?
But then you need flight control, because you'll if everybody has a flying car, then there's a lot more accidents happening, or we have to make roads in the sky because we're going to have the same problem.
No. But there are the regulations. If you have like ultralight plane, how do you fly around it? Where you can fly, how you don't fly somewhere, whatever, right? And obviously different countries are doing that. I'm no expert here, by the way. I think, with APIs, it's actually an interesting thing to say. And that goes back to our topic on we need to build API differently. Right now, we were building APIs for the anticipated use cases of those. And that enabled us to basically maybe make them more efficient for those use cases. So accessing certain records maybe from our system, we could do caching internally, whatever that was. Now, maybe GraphQL was the first one to challenge that, because they were like, these clients can access whatever they want. And we were like, that's not good, because they do these queries and break our systems, right? Like we learned this over last whatever year. So, but those clients had the freedom kind of to access whatever they want, the way they want it from our servers, which was giving us headaches. And now we are with agents, we are basically
even more.
These agents, they don't need our pre-built, tailored APIs. They need the freedom, and they do need it for, of course, like be doing whatever they want to be doing, but they need it because the functionality. Let me explain. It turns out that currently LLMs are really, really bad. Large language models are really bad at figuring complex workflows with the complex APIs. They're really bad at it. They might get way better over the time to figuring out this, but as we speak, 2024, end of 2024, LLMs are having a hard time figuring out complex workflows with the complex APIs. They won't be able to do a check-in into hotel with Oracle Hospitality API. And that's not a problem with that API. That's just like the state of, for the record, it would take you as a person also a couple of days.
Yeah.
And there are always very simpler API that are still difficult. So you can take Affinity CRM, which is a very, very fine, granular, normalized API that is not use case oriented, as in design of it. Also Salesforce API to some extent, because they talk about these objects and object IDs, and they don't talk about users, customers, pipelines, whatever flows. So these APIs are a tough problem for LLMs. And what we need is actually APIs that are designed for the use cases that the LLMs are having. So similar that we were saying that you should have a product owner for an API, and it should be designing that API for those use cases that your users are having. We need this even more. But these use cases can be many, and they can vary greatly, right? But we need APIs to be designed for the use cases that the LLMs are having. And if we'll be doing it manually, then we are, in problems.
Yeah. But I think there's also, so there's one aspect is complexity and dealing with complexity. The other aspect is dealing with value. And like when lives are at stake or when money is at stake, you don't want some non-deterministic thing to just do something. Like it feels a little bit like when you go into a shop, when you're browsing, you just do your own stuff. Like you have the interfaces of the shop that allows you to find out what you want to buy. But when you go and actually make the payment, there's a system, like be it a machine or a person or a combination, that is going to make sure that you actually paid the right amount for the thing that you're buying. So that you're going from this unconstrained, whatever you do flies mode of working to this super constrained. Now this matters, and here we need to watch out. So I think that switching between modes, and they require different guardrails. The same way that we were talking about earlier. Like if you're going 300 kilometers an hour, humans can't react fast enough anymore. You can't go 300 kilometers an hour on a like your local road, because you're going to kill people. Including yourself. But if you're on a highway, you can go a bit faster because at least everybody's going the same direction.
Yeah.
But then when you want to go really fast, you better be on a super constrained thing where either flight control is telling you like, nope, there's nobody else on this path, or there's the railway that keeps you going in one direction.
Yeah, and that's why we have these whatever regulations or guide rails that you can go only this fast, or you can do this and that, right? But we are at the inception of AI accessing or doing digital things. So we'll be now trying to set up these guide rails for AI consumption of APIs and the web and whatever these agents will be doing. But nevertheless, they are coming, and we need to start laying down this foundation for it, and we need to start realizing that this is actually already happening.
Yeah, it almost feels like you need there's the explorative mode where whatever, but then you have to give the signal to the consumer that, okay, now you're in a trusted context. The same way that it works with the bank, where you have to validate that, yes, I want to make this transaction, and it sends you back to the bank, and you have to do your two-factor authentication or whatever. So is it something like that we'll need, where we have certain interactions that do happen over APIs, or then maybe those are not even APIs anymore, because you're going into a web component that can be embedded.
So what's actually making me kind of worried is this concept of you built an application for our API. Well, we need to review it, right? Submit your application before the API keys, or before the application will be able to access the real data. We need to do a review of that, right? Wow. I mean, okay, I get it. That application should have some trust, and you are giving it to people that are using it, right? So there is this that's already been in place for years and years and many years. And our application, I think our agent is now waiting for one CRM to review it.
Yeah.
On the same note, if a person goes to that UI, you are not going to review that. And then, yes, we were like access controls and access logs. These guys were doing some strange things. But why we were not concerned was because it was single person and it could do only so many clicks a day, right? But we discussed the UI was and is limiting you, and you are slow. So that's why we were like somehow okay that, yes, these people are not kind of being reviewed for the access, but this will change, right? And you won't be able to review the agent fully because of their nature. They are very, very scaringly similar to humans because you ask them 6 times to do something and they can do it 5 times in the same way. And for the 6th time, they will misclick or they're like, hey, what if I do it this way, right? Yeah. This is actually, these LLMs are like surprisingly closer to how we operate, right? In a good and bad way, because this gives them the power to figure out when API changes or where the UI changes. They are, back to the name of this podcast, they are more resilient than our, because they can figure out, oh, the setting is no longer there, but this looks like a cog icon. Maybe if I click on it, I'll get to what was previously called settings button, right? Or whatever. They are now able to do it. The clients, the agents are more resilient than ever. Yet that also brings the fact that they are not deterministic. They can try to do different things tomorrow that they were doing yesterday.
So fascinating, super fascinating, and it's really cool to be able to talk with you, like because you're actually in the trenches doing this stuff, and for people that are listening, like your company Superface. Basically, you're doing this automation between systems. Is that a good characterization?
That's the agent that we are building on top of the infrastructure. So we were talking about the infrastructure. So we are laying down the fund for AI infrastructure. So AI being able to connect to APIs mostly and do stuff. So that's a Superface app. That's like if you are building the agent that you can go there and connect your agent to these capabilities. And then, yes, we are building an agent on top of it that is basically trying to figure out, hey, you want to do this. So I'll use this API and that API and this tool and this capability and put it all nicely together to give you some business value. Again, I think it's important to understand that there is a new way a human will interact with software, and there is a new way a software will interact with software. And that's the world that we need to build for, not the old world where humans were stuck in the UI and where we were manually connecting software to talk to other software. So wherever you are, whether it's that you are building UI or SaaS applications or where you are providing an API, understand that there is now a new persona that might be using your software. And you're probably looking at that and how that will interact with you. And back to the differentiators. What is the differentiator of your offering? Is that really only that you have a nicer UI? Well, maybe it's time to start thinking about that.
Yeah. Regardless if you're ready to jump in and start building agents yourself or start providing APIs for agents, I think looking back at your organization and start thinking in a much more deliberate way about what are the value streams that your company provides, what are the capabilities that people are using from your company, what are the components, the service components that you have, and how can they be recombined and reused and abused, and then how do you protect against that? I think that's a really important part to start looking at.
What are your business incentives, basically? Because right now, people are mostly looking at AI as something that might increase the efficiency. You can do something faster or with less resources or whatever that is. Also, maybe innovation. So you can have AI to figuring out something from your data or whatever. So those are the 2 main incentives, reducing the costs or time, obviously the classical incentives, but there will be more over the time.
Those are local transformations because you are in control over the model. You tell your team what they're allowed to do, where your data is supposed to travel, and so on. what we've been talking about this podcast is the global societal transformation that is coming when agents become a primary user interface, and why those are superior to some of the graphical user interface that we're using today, and how they're breaking the contextual boundaries between systems, and creating just a better integrated and probably better usable experience for people around, and why, and why that matters, and then also how that will trigger a whole bunch of like second order changes throughout all of business, because we all have to rethink. Like if you're relying on arbitrage, then probably it's time to start thinking about, okay, are there other ways to differentiate and to create something that's unique? It's this how to deal with commoditization of capabilities, because
Absolutely. Yeah.
because that is what's actually happening.
We are seeing it. Yeah, we are already seeing it with copilots, with ChatGPTs, with Superface agent. We are seeing these interfaces being used instead of the softwares that are underneath this. Like you say, create an event on my calendar, like give me information about this company that I'm about to meet. This is happening with whole new interfaces than it was like 2 years ago. And there'll be more and more happening outside of the original interfaces, maybe outside of keyboards and screens.
Yeah. Interesting times.
Very exciting. We are lucky, actually, living in these two revolutions that we actually witnessed so far. One being of internet and cell phones, and then the race of large language models and AI, generative AI.
And what they enable, because LLMs per se. Okay, there's a lot of development going into the models itself. But I think it's what you do with the model, and maybe that's a good question to you. Like for me, an LLM is kind of like another database. Like it's a component that you use to build systems with, not necessarily I'd like to hope that we're not going to have a centralized agent system, or like the platforms. Like the social media platforms, like the agent that everybody uses, that knows everything about everybody.
Now, I think more of LLMs also CPUs. You have all the different sort of LLMs. Different CPUs are suitable for different, kind of tasks. For some of the tasks, the large language models are not as good as some smaller models. They can run in the cloud. They can run on the device. There's like plethora of LLMs. It's not just one. OpenAI is one, and so these are the CPUs, the essential building blocks of the agents that we are now building and that we are now delivering. And there you have agents running in the cloud, and you will have agents running on your computer, and basically you have them everywhere, and they'll be running and doing things.
Yeah. So and then the LLM just becomes a component of some system.
Yeah, as a CPU, it's a very critical, important component, and need to be the right CPU for the right task. GPU, CPU, all power CPUs, whatever that is. I think we are very good at these analogies. Yeah, so these are our CPUs that we have for the first time. We didn't have them before.
Yeah,
that's, as we discussed, they are able to semantically understand things which was not possible before. To some extent, and depending on the kind of LLM. But we are building software and agents on using these CPUs, and then we basically have software gain these new superpowers that we didn't have before, and connecting them to the infrastructure of the capabilities that we have. That's what we were basically discussing.
It's like adding another piece to our stack. That's the same way that you have the gem stack or the lamp stack. It's now we've added the LLM to the stack. I think that's
absolutely. And like with everything, if you are an architect, you understand that this is one of the building, stones, the things that you might be using for the task, but it's not always the right thing. There's still humanistic software. There'll still be people connecting APIs. But now we are seeing this new powerful thing emerging.
Yeah, very good. I think I'll wrap it up here. Thank you very much, Z. It's always a super pleasure to be talking with you and to...
Absolutely. This was fun. Thanks for having me, Kristof.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode. This episode of the Resilience Podcast was brought to you by Pronovix. You can learn more about our company at pronovix.com, and thank you for listening.